Hello guys, today I want to tell you something interesting about nature and science. It's amazing how much more forest there is now in places than there used to be, says paleontologist Katie Whitelock, who has been comparing historical photos of Yellowstone National Park with what can be seen today. The suspects that parts of the park were recovering from the settlement-driven burning when it was established, but in the many years since, new forest grew, sparse forest filled in, and trees shifted in spacious composition. Whitlock has found too that many vast stands of trees have been plagued by invasive pests or destroyed by massive blazes after decades of fire suppression. Even though Native Americans called Yellowstone home for more than 10,000 years, as Richard Grant reported for Smithsonian in 2021. The United States government has claimed protectorship over the 3,000 square miles since 1872. During those 150 years, the absence of commercial or agricultural development has left many indigenous sites fully intact and allowed archaeologists to better understand the area's millennia of human history. So, too, has this been a boon for scientists of other disciplines. Whitelock's research on climate change is just a small part of the vast wealth of scientific research conducted by scientists in the park. Part of the value of a place like Yellowstone is that we can observe in the kind of natural science lab how ecosystems change over time, she says. The park has been a hotbed of scientific study for decades, so here are some of the biggest changes scientists have observed in the nation's oldest national park. Wolves howled and prowled throughout the area long before the park was established, but the 1872 congressional mandate to provide against the wanton destruction of the fish and game wasn't applied to wolves, which were often viewed as a threat to more desirable wild animals like elk and the livestock of local rangers. Yellowstone's gray wolves were hunted and poisoned during the late and early 19th. At least 136 were killed between 1914 and 1926 when the park's last buck was eliminated. After half a century, the Endangered Species Act was passed in 1973 and the effort to return Yellowstone's wolves began. In 1995, 31 Canadian wolves were relocated to Yellowstone. Nearly 100 wolves now call the park home, and more than 500 live in the 3,000 square mile region that includes the park. Protected in the park, wolf populations have grown and are no longer listed and endangered. Far from universally popular, the predators are hunted in surrounding states. The hunt stokes tension between humans who view wolves as a threat to livestock and elk hunts, and those who promote their role as a key apex predator in the ecosystem. The wolves' return to the Yellowstone ecosystem is a fascinating natural experiment. When Yellowstone's wolves were gone, the park's elk population spiked so much that culling was practiced to keep the herd in check. When culling was stopped in 1968, the year-round population swelled from 5,000 to nearly 20,000 elk. Since wolf reintroduction, elk numbers have dropped again to about 6,000. Research suggests that the wolves are helping to create a smaller but more stable, healthy, and resilient elk herd, which no longer grows in good times to devour all available food resources and starve and mass during bad years. Reintroducing wolves after a century's absence is also impacting many other animal and plant species across the ecosystem. When they kill elk, for example, wolves provide food for scavengers like ravens and coyotes. But untangling less obvious wolf's impact is keeping scientists busy and sparking debate. In the absence of wolves, large elk herds continually graze at young willow, expand at cottonwoods. So wolf predation may result in tree growth that in turn boosts population of other animals, like birds that depend trees. But other research suggests the extent of wolf impact on young tree growth simply by reducing elk numbers is debatable. Trees are thriving in some areas and not others, while variables like weather and climate also play major roles in tree growth. So do other species like beavers who depend on willows and in turn create conditions to stimulate their growth. Told they were tweaked by President Herbert Hoover, Yellowstone's original borders haven't changed all that much, but the wild national habitat available in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, an area 10 times larger than the park itself, has been shrinking dramatically. That's a problem for the many animals that frequently cross park borders. Montana State University ecologists Andrew Hansen and Linda Phillips published a comprehensive study gauging the health of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem and found that since 1970, the ecosystem's human population has doubled and housing density was tripled. Both are projected to double again 2050. Human development now covers an estimated 31% of the Great Yellowstone ecosystem. Rural homes more or less ring the public land on the small sides of the park. It's rather stunning to look at a map of all the homes that now surround the park, Hansen says, and changes in these private lands surrounding the park really influences what happens in this park. Many elk, bison, pronghorn, and other ungulates summer in the park, but in winter head to lower elevations and increasingly developed private lands where they aren't always welcome and are frequently hunted. Ranging animals like grizzlies are more frequently being killed on roads or getting into trouble with humans outside of the boundaries. Connectivity between ecosystems like subalpine mountain forests loved by wolverines is reduced by roads, and developments making it dangerous for animals to travel between patches of habitats that can support them. Problematic species enter the park from bordering rangelands as well. Invasive grasses and plants spread toward the park from horse and livestock grazing, and non-native species, like the eastern smallmouth bass, which poses a grave threat to the park's iconic trout populations, have been recently caught just outside of the park boundaries. But the most notable change in the ecosystem is the number of humans present in the region and the ways they impact it. So the park itself has been slow to acknowledge the fact Yellowstone was never a wilderness untouched by humans. For thousands of years, indigenous communities traveled throughout the park's man-made borders, living sustainably in low-lying areas during the colder months and the higher plateau regions in the spring. They were displaced during Yellowstone National Park's early years, during time when visitors were numbered in the hundreds. Today, more than 4 million people visit each year. Large crowds and even background trail users frequently push animals from areas where they feed, rest, or even mate. Between all the development surrounding the park and the increased number of people who are recreating on public lands in and around the park, the pressures are built quite dramatically, Hansen says. The days of North America's great bison herds were already past when the park was established. Shifting climate produced some prolonged dry years for grassland forage, and the range was increasingly coveted for livestock. At the same time, a mid-19th century boom in bison hunting, fueled by the hide market, led to unsustainable slaughter. Only about 2,000 bison lived in the park by the 1990s. In Pelican Valley, and their plight provided an opportunity for an unprecedented attempt to recover population of a large grazing herbivore. In 1902, 21 bison were purchased from private hands and raised at the Lamar Buffalo Range. This mingled and bred with the few free roaming animals left, and while protected within the park, grew to a herd about 1,300 animals by the 1950s. Today, as any visitor can attest, Yellowstone's bison population is doing well. The population fluctuates between 2,000 and 5,000 animals. As bison numbers increase, the hungry mammals frequently stray outside park boundaries where they are often not welcome, particularly because they can spread disease to cattle. For population control, several Native American tribes and the state of Montana sponsor limited bison hunts near the border. Park officials also trap bison at the northern border, sending some to the slaughter while transferring others to populate new areas, including Native American lands under the Bison Conservation and Transfer Program. Grazing bison and their piles of poop fuel a cycle of nutrient-rich soils and plants. When bison march on the tops of grasses, they simulate new plant growth, producing more of the productive foods that they and other herbivores rely on. In this way, the bison engineer the ecosystem in Yellowstone. But not everyone agrees that the system is in balance. At least one study suggests the park's iconic wildlife haven. The Lamar Valley is being overgrazed by bison. Researchers say the bison are wiping out vegetation, and the authors suspect the animals didn't live in the valley in large numbers during prehistoric periods. Other experts disagree. The debate highlights challenges in trying to manage the park ecosystem. So tasked since 1872 with preserving the park in a natural condition. Scientists aren't always sure exactly that Yellowstone looked like in the past. Yellowstone's subterranean volcanic system fills an unrivaled landscape of some 10,000 geothermal features, more than the rest of the world combined. Public mud pots, rainbow-hued hot springs, and the legendary concentration of geysers give vent to hot water and steam in sometimes spectacular fashion. The volcanic system is subject to complex fluctuations and even the park's most famously reliable attraction. Old Faithful has shifted its explosions over the years. In the 1870s, when geological surveyors began to observe the geyser, the time between its eruptions was 60 to 70 minutes. During the 1950s, however, the period began changing, and today's average is 94 minutes. Notable earthquakes in 1955, 59, 1975, and 1983 landed at the time between eruptions. Other changes have been more extreme. Steamboat Gazer, the world's tallest active geyser at some 400 feet, erupted infrequently throughout most of the park's history, sometimes stretching as long as 50 years between major events. But in March 2018, after staying quiet for 3 years during the 1960s and early 1980s, and scientists are still unraveling all the complex factors that drive such changes. One possible clue: Steamboat sits atop a Chicago-sized area of the Norris Geyser Basin that for 2 decades has been moving up and down by as much as 5 inches in a year. This is likely caused by intrusions of magma that releases superheated gases. When those gases are trapped below rock, the system swells and the surface literally rises until the gases find an escape route, and their release causes the ground to subside again. The volatile nature of the complex system beneath the surface means that future change is certain. Scientists believe that Old Faithful once shut down entirely some 800 years ago, during a period of extreme droughts when there was not enough water coursing through the area's subterranean plumbing to fuel geyser eruptions. If Yellowstone future is increasingly drier, as expect, all faithful and other park gazers might not have enough water to put on the spectacular shows visitors love to watch. Okay guys, that's it for today. Have a nice day and bye bye.